All right, so our next question is, will bankruptcy override a judgment on my credit report, and which hurts me the most? Well, let me kind of take that a little bit out of order. So, is it better to have a bankruptcy or better to have a judgment? Well, it depends. Both of those are negative on your credit report. We look at the timing. So, generally, anything that happens bad here, the next day it has the most impact. The next day it starts to slowly go down. Now, really, I mean like the next month or the next 6 months or the next year. Here's the worst that happens, and then it starts declining because, and that makes sense if you think about it. If somebody failed to make a payment, would you rather that have been 6 years ago or 6 days ago if they're wanting you to loan them money? So we do look at the timing of it. Generally, a bankruptcy, and I assume what's meant here is a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. It just wipes it out. It's also called a straight bankruptcy. And so a bankruptcy will normally wipe out the judgment so that you do not owe the judgment anymore. In terms of, which is worse, well, let me give you this example. If somebody says, I think I'm going to have some judgments against me, I'll just wait till I get the judgments that I'm pretty sure are coming. And so that'll happen now, and then I'll file bankruptcy. Well, that's fine. But what if you could file bankruptcy before the judgments? Well, see, if you do that, a bankruptcy stops a lawsuit, and there are exceptions to this, but normally that happens. And so if that debt is wiped out in the Chapter 7, then there is no judgment. So sometimes it's a timing issue of, do I go ahead, pull the trigger, file bankruptcy? I think bankruptcy is very rarely appropriate, but it can be appropriate. So do I do that now, and then I don't ever have a judgment? Or do I get a judgment, and then after the judgment, I've got to file bankruptcy? So in a perfect world, we would rather just have a bankruptcy and no judgments. But if you have a judgment, then a bankruptcy can certainly help by getting rid of that debt. Now, as far as the impact on your credit score, it just really depends. There's a lot of factors. Are you discharging a car loan judgment? Well, that might have more meaning to an auto dealer or auto finance company than if we're talking about a $5,000 medical debt bill or debt. So it just really depends. Now, the first part of this question, will bankruptcy override a judgment? I assume what was meant there is if I have a judgment, $5,000, and then I file bankruptcy, does that make this go away? Well, it doesn't make the actual judgment go away. But what it does is it means you owe zero on that judgment. So that debt, that liability is gone. Now, you have to be careful. There's a judgment, and then there's a lien put on your property. Well, that lien doesn't just automatically go away because you file bankruptcy. So sometimes you have to do something in bankruptcy court that's called avoiding the lien or getting rid of the lien. And so that gets into some complicated stuff, but just understand that normally a Chapter 7 bankruptcy will wipe out a typical judgment, and a bankruptcy and a judgment are bad on your credit report. I don't know, though, that it's necessarily worse if you have, let's say, 3 or 4 judgments, and then you file bankruptcy. Yeah, it's bad to file the bankruptcy, but getting rid of those judgments can be very helpful too. So anyway, lots of questions to ask if you sit down with a bankruptcy attorney about what will happen with these judgments, what happens to any liens, and what does this do to my credit report. But I hope this has at least given you some information about this.